Should we be concerned about David Montgomery? That and so much more coming up on tonight's episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show. And Troy, go ahead and start us off here. We got a report out of camp that David Montgomery is getting special teams reps and Khalil Herbert has been crushing it with the ones. Are you concerned?
Absolutely, you should be concerned. Okay, so for those who don't know, it's not good if your starting running back is playing special teams. It's different if it's like your wide receiver, right? So if your wide receiver like takes like a punt, punt kickoff or whatever, punt return, that's completely different than your starting running back. Because your starting running back's already getting pounded, in the trenches on every single other play, right? So if one of your running backs is taking special teams work, that means that they're going to be getting less snaps on the field. Usually the backup running backs are the ones that are in special teams because they'll rotate in, with the starter during the regular plays. So when I read that report and I read that article, I was like, and I saw something about that he is embracing taking on special teams work. I don't know what you're doing, David, but we got to talk. That's not a good thing. If they want you to do special teams work, that means they want you on the field less. And like David already said, it might mean more Khalil Herbert. So if I'm a Monty, if I roster Monty, I'm extremely nervous right now.
And I mean, we've been talking about this for a few months now about how Khalil Herbert is just a dog. He was great as a rookie, and now we got a new staff coming in here. We got David Montgomery on the final year of his deal. They didn't want to extend him. It sounds like he's going to be gone after this season. So kind of reading between the lines, I think that we knew Khalil Herbert was going to be a little bit more involved than other people thought. But man, these reports about him taking special teams reps are certainly concerning. Vic, what are your thoughts on this situation that's developing in Chicago?
I'm with Troy. You cannot overlook this, especially knowing Montgomery's going anywhere from running back 14 to 18, 19 right now in that range. You have to be concerned. And if I am David Montgomery, I'm also concerned. He's in his contract year. If they're going to as fantasy analysts, we expect, okay, coaching staff's going to run David Montgomery into the ground because he's on his last year. Well, this is a brand new coaching staff. We don't really know what they're going to do. And we see that now when they're shaking things up, using him on these kickoff attempts. It's very, very interesting. If they're going to be limiting his reps and getting Herbert more involved, if I'm Monty myself, I'm nervous. So obviously, yes, I'm nervous for fantasy. I saw that Khalil Herbert had 27 kickoff attempts last season. That was a team high. But now that he's getting these first team reps as a lead running back, I don't know. This timeshare is becoming more and more valid. And yes, I am scared off of Monty's current ADP. Why aren't they having rookie Velus Jones doing these kickoff returns in practice? That's very interesting to me that he's not involved.
That's what they drafted this guy for, right? Like Velus Jones, like you get the ball in his hands, let him do stuff on special teams, so some screens and some jet sweeps, like just get the ball in his hands. It seems kind of crazy to be putting David Montgomery there. But let me just kind of throw some other names out to you because with this report, we say as much as we can that we shouldn't overreact to camp news, but let's be honest, we're humans, and that's what people do is they overreact to camp news, and here we are talking about this right now. So right now, looking at David Montgomery's ADP, he is currently getting drafted as the RB17. So I'm expecting that to slide a little bit. Some of the guys behind him, though, are guys that I'm not especially excited about either. I mean, it feels like this is just smack dab in the middle of the running back dead zone. So first guy I want to throw out there, Cam Akers. Are you guys thinking about taking Cam Akers ahead of David Montgomery?
I think we actually were going to be talking about Cam Akers a little bit later, but
yes, we are.
Oh, gross! I don't like
that's tough.
I think I'd rather have Cam Akers though.
Yeah, better offense, more goal line opportunities.
All right, and I mean we've heard about a committee coming there as well. I mean, anytime Sean McVay is asked about Cam Akers, he says, "Well, Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson." I mean, it's been a lot of we talk. People are trying to pry from Sean McVay. It seems like they just want him to make any sort of commendation on Cam Akers, and he just keeps talking about Darrell Henderson. Now, another guy that's behind him, and I think I know your answer on this one, but Travis Etienne is getting drafted behind David Montgomery right now. Who do you prefer, Montgomery or Etienne?
Etienne, easy. I could list. I'm looking at the ADPs right now. I could list a bunch of people I would take over David Montgomery. If we want to play this name game, I'll make a list of all the people I'll take over.
Troy, just list them off. Who are some guys that are currently Breece Hall with you? I feel like he is about 5-10 spots higher than he should be.
Yeah, Breece Hall's going over expert consensus. So RB20.
Akers.
I take Jacobs. I take J.K. Dobbins. Elijah Mitchell. Either Elijah Mitchell, AJ Dillon. Like that's where I'm kind of like
That's the
Mitchell
cutoff.
and Dillon. I don't know. It just I'm not a huge Monty guy anyway, and there's no disrespect to David Montgomery. I think he's a solid running back. But for some reason, anytime he's on the board, there's always somebody else I like better. And I just named you a bunch of guys I just like better because it's just opportunity, situation, whatever. So I'm not gonna have a lot of Montgomery shares, that's for sure. Unless people completely overreact and he just falls down draft boards, cool. But I don't see that happening. So I'm not gonna have a lot of shares of David Montgomery.
Yeah, and we're talking about running backs that we take in that spot instead, but what about DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Darren
Right.
Waller, Allen Robinson, Jalen Waddle?
All of them.
Yeah, I mean, David Montgomery, prior to this report coming out, was one of my biggest fades at cost, and now, I mean, wheels up for Khalil Herbert. I think that he's going to have a much bigger role than anybody anticipates. This is going to be a little bit more of a split duties coming out of Chicago. So, to answer the question, should we be concerned about David Montgomery? I think the answer is a resounding and agreed upon yes. Now, before we get into the show, just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/footballguys. We start off the show with pre-submitted questions that we get throughout the week, but feel free to start dropping some questions in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end of the show. You can send your questions to mailbag@footballguys.com. You can DM them to any of us on Twitter. You can add us on Twitter. Whatever's easiest to you. If you get us a good question, we will answer it on this show. And let's go ahead and dive right into the next one from our friend Laquan Jones. And Laquan is asking us thoughts on Cam Akers' ADP. I've seen him go as high as 306. Laquan, big-time Rams fan, doesn't really seem to be all on Cam Akers this year. So, Victoria, start us off here. How do you feel about this ADP?
He is not on Cam Akers. I love this question. I think with Akers, his current ADP we've got from Football Guys, running back 18, 37 overall, and it's rising. So that's pretty rich. I feel like most people either have recency bias for this kind of putrid yards per carry we saw when he came back from his injury last season, or on the other side of the camp, you're like, wow, he came back from his crazy injury last season. He had the starting role locked in. Maybe a little bit of bias from the past of McVay loves a workhorse running back. They're still thinking of Todd Gurley days, etc. And I think that we got to be in the middle somewhere there because as you already mentioned, as you guys mentioned already, McVay is not leaving Darrell Henderson out of the conversation. He's not hesitant to do that this season. So we have to be a little wary there. I think those running backs in that range that we just discussed, I feel like I'd take most of those guys over Akers too, depending. I know Akers is still in a high-powered offense. They're going to score a lot. They're going to lean on him. But, I mean, Zeke Elliott is going, I think, 2 picks before Cam Akers right now, which is pretty crazy to me. He's going to have a workload. I understand the Tony Pollard truthers. I respect you guys. But Zeke gets it done each and every season in RB1. Since he got into the league, he's going to get that volume. He's going to catch some passes as well. As we know, they're down James Washington. And not that James Washington was going to be a difference maker at the wide receiver position for the Cowboys, but he's a body that they need. They've got CeeDee Lamb. They've got Jalen Tolbert, my boy, that we hyped up on the show last week. And then the depth chart is pretty weak after that. I don't know about Cam Akers. I think that, again, it depends. You also, Dave, named a bunch of wide receivers that are going in that range where I just don't think I can pass those guys up for this. You're not quite at the dead zone with Akers, but you're close, I think.
And I think the dead zone is a little bit objective. It seems like this year running backs have been pushed down a little bit, so I don't really know exactly where you can label it, but these guys just feel like running back dead zone guys. Like they might be a little bit later down the draft than normal, but just not really feeling too great about them. And then, Vic, you said Ezekiel Elliott's been an RB1 every year since he came in the league. I just got to point out, one year he finished as a very low-end RB1 when he was suspended for 6 games. So I just got to say, this guy does have his faults. He had one season where he wasn't a high-end RB1. Just got to point that out. Completely giving you a hard time. You know how much I love Zeke Elliott. But, Troy, same question over to you. Cam Akers ADP, are you in or out at that cost?
I'm absolutely out. And it's the thing about Cam Akers is like prior to last season, right? This time last season before he got injured, or maybe a few weeks, whenever he got injured last year, I was in on the Cam Akers hype train. But and maybe this is coach speak, but we just saw, I think Sean McVay had a report yesterday. He was like, "Oh, I believe I have 2 starting running backs." Like, ew, gross. Like, we don't want to hear that, Sean. Okay, like we need some objectivity here. So, and then like last year, and his thing, last year he's obviously coming off the injury, so he wasn't as efficient. He didn't look as good, which is absolutely reasonable because he came way before his expected time. So I was just like, I don't know. I'm trying to be objective here, but there's all signs are pointing to a committee. And I think until we're proven wrong, I think it's going to be that. I think Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, it's going to flip-flop, on a weekly basis who you want, in my opinion. So there's nothing that we've seen or heard that's telling us that Cam Akers is the clear running back 1 on this team. And for that reason, and I think there's going to be weeks where he's going to end up being an RB1, but I just feel like it's going to be unpredictable because, again, Daryl Henderson could easily as well end up in the end zone or getting more rushing opportunities. And they drafted Kyron Williams. I know he's injured right now, so we'll see what happens with him. I don't know how he's going to factor in to this offense, but he's drafted in the 4th round. It's just, I know that's not extreme high draft capital, but he might get some work into this as well. So at cost, no, I'm fading. And there's other guys I like a lot better.
Yeah, and Vic already called it out, but like Sean McVay, he's not a workhorse guy, and I got to think that he might be a little bit scared because of what happened with Todd Gurley. I mean, he was giving Todd Gurley 30, 35 touches a game, and the guy had to retire at, 26, 27 years old. So it seems like since then he's taken not necessarily a committee approach where he doesn't have like a corral of guys every single week, but he certainly goes with the hot hand approach where we see Malcolm Brown as a guy for a few weeks, and then Daryl Henderson's a guy for a few weeks, and then Cam Akers comes in. I don't think that any guy is going to be seeing, a heavy workload for a full 17-game season. So I'm out on Akers as his ADP as well. I mean, Akers and Montgomery are 2 guys that are going very, very close to each other in ADP, and I feel like we're really just talking about the same guy when we talk about both of these guys. Guys that could really struggle to get meaningful usage. So not too crazy about Cam Akers either. Next question comes from our friend Ahan, and he says, so Cortland Sutton is going to lead the NFL in touchdowns. Do the Broncos find a way to replace Tim Patrick through free agency, though? This is a great question. Troy, start us off. Do you think that they're going to stick with what they've got, or is Will Fuller going to get that phone call in a couple days?
I'm saying, like, if it's not Will Fuller, is it Cole Beasley? Like, but here's the thing, like, I don't know. Like, there's not a lot on the free agency market. If they do sign someone in free agency, it's not going to be someone you want to start in fantasy, right? Unless it's Will Fuller. Maybe that makes it interesting, but there's no other name out there. It's going to be somebody that's, again, been cut 20 times, most likely, if they're going to sign somebody, right? They're going to have to wait in line for the Cowboys because they're going to be looking at free agency first. But on a serious note, I think there's the guys who's going to step up. Greg Dulcich. What's up, Mr. Scampers? Oh, I'm getting to him. I'm getting to him.
Let's go.
But it's like, yeah, so I'm saying, like, KJ Hamler obviously has an opportunity to, step up in this offense now. So last year, he was obviously injured. Now he gets an opportunity to shine. Greg Dulcich, though, there's been talks about Greg Dulcich all camp. He's a very athletic tight end. He's big body. He's, good with it, good with catching the ball. So I'm thinking to myself, what if he happens to step up? He's already competing for the tight end 1 position. Maybe this helps him out.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
Yes, exactly. So, and then Albert O obviously is there too. I don't want to forget about Albert O. So there's a lot of options on the team that could most likely fill that tight end 3, the wide receiver 3 role on the team. But yeah, hopefully it's KJ Hamler. We'll see it. But I feel like they're 2 different wide receivers, though, KJ Hamler versus Tim Patrick. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, there's different options, though. I feel like could step up. I don't think they really necessarily need to go in free agency and have to sign somebody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've got depth. That's kind of what this team was built for, is that they could lose a guy like Tim Patrick and still be in a pretty good position. Victoria, same question to you, though. Do you think that they go out and they bring in somebody, or do you think they're pretty content with who they've got? We've got Mr. Scampers in the chat with the Kendall Hinton throwback. You guys all remember that game, right? When he
was
best in 2020? Woo!
Oh my goodness. Yeah, he's still on the squad. I see him on the depth chart here right behind Cortland Sutton. I'm with you guys. I don't think they're going to try very hard on that free agency market. You guys already covered that. There's really just a bunch of scrubs that are left there. And, they could lean more heavily on their running backs in Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, both great pass catchers there. I think Troy already hit on this, but this maybe lends itself to the Albert O breakout narrative, even though I personally want to see my boy Greg D mix in the end zone as well. That beautiful, beautiful man. If you have never seen that man, look up a picture of him right now. You'll thank me later. But yeah, I think this just lends itself to the rest of their core. They've got a great depth chart, and Russell Wilson can probably make just about anyone look pretty good these days.
I think you're on mute, Dave. I
Oh,
can't hear
Dave, you're muted.
All right, we are good to go now. Somebody said it in the chat, and Troy mentioned it, but KJ Hamler is the guy that I think is I don't ever want to say a benefactor to an injury, because an injury hurts the entire team, and it's not something that you want to really look at in that light. But I think this opens up an opportunity for KJ Hamler, who was just activated off the PUP list. And I'm not sure if you guys saw what Patrick Surtain said about him, but that this guy has true 4.2 speed. He said within 2 strides into his break, he is running at full speed and just cruising past people. And I mean, second round pick with a blazing speed. I mean, people have already compared this guy to Deshaun Jackson. So if you're, talking about Russ Wilson and his penchant for throwing deep balls and hitting players in stride downfield, that seems like it's just a perfect match for KJ Hamler. But really, I think the biggest thing here is Tim Patrick was a target, just a target hog when they got to the end zone. That's where he really did his best work, was in the end zone. And I think that's why Hahan says this about Cortland Sutton leading the NFL in touchdowns, because now, you got the tight ends, but Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, those aren't the guys that are really going to, catch a contested catch in the end zone while they're draped in coverage. That's exactly what Cortland Sutton does. So Cortland Sutton wouldn't shock me one bit if he ends up seeing 25, 30, 35 end zone targets by the end of this season. Let's hop on to the next question here, and this is from Mace Riney, and Mace says, am I delusional for drafting Raheem Mostert at the end of my best ball drafts? Vic, start us out. How are we feeling about Raheem Mostert? Is he an okay late round throw?
Yeah, I think he's okay. I think I'm kind of in the middle here, and I'm intrigued to hear Troy's answer, because this is his backfield, I'm pretty sure. So I hate to call a lot of players injury prone, but he's dealt with something almost every single year. It's constantly just popping off in a few games. You pick him up, you think you just got the waiver wire play of the century. You're so excited, and then he broke his arm. He did this, he did that. So I don't want to say that. I mean, if you're barely spending anything on him, if he's in the last round or two, that's just fine. I think that backfield is what scares me. We talked about it on the show a few times. That's just a monster, looking like a committee backfield, although we do love Chase Edmonds here. But yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering, Dave, you're doing a lot more basketball drafts than Troy and I combined. So, I mean, are you seeing, and there's probably a couple better dart throws in those last 2 rounds than Mostert, to be honest.
I mean, the way I look at it, in the final rounds, you're not looking for any sort of weekly points. Floor does not matter. If your 18th round pick gets you 0 points for the entire season, it is what it is. You're chasing pure upside there, and I do like the upside for Raheem Mostert. I mean, there have been a lot of times where if I draft Tua, in the 10th or 11th round, I'll spend my 17th and 18th round picks. I'll draft Raheem Mostert and Sony Michel just so I can be fully invested in the Dolphins offense. And Chase Edmonds, I'm warming up to it more and more by the week. I think that he is going to be the guy, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a committee approach here. And when you look at the profiles of all the guys, the reason I really like Sony Michel is because I think he's got the size to be the goal line back. And the reason I like Raheem Mostert is because he is the fastest guy on this team, and he has experience, and he understands his offense a little bit. But at a certain point, I don't like labeling players injury prone either, but this guy's been in the league since 2015. I just did the math really quickly. He has played in a possible 52% of his games. This man has been hurt for almost half of the games that he has been able to play in since he's been in the league. And like I said, I don't like slapping that label on somebody, but if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I mean, Raheem Mostert has never played a full season, so you got to be a little bit concerned about that. But that injury risk is obviously baked into his cost, and that's why you can get him for dirt cheap at the very end of your draft. But Troy, I assume that you've had your ear to the Miami beat. What are you hearing? Is Mostert somebody that's been doing anything? Is he still in recovery? How's he looking in camp so far?
He's still in recovery. Like that's one thing that we need to realize, that he's still recovering from his previous injury. So if anyone knows about, because we all talk about how he's injury prone, you know who knows a lot about his injuries? Mike McDaniel, because he's seen it live, right, in San Francisco. So I think he knows that, listen, this guy, he's been hurt a lot. I'm bringing him in, and think of it. How many touches is this man going to get? So he's recovering from an injury. And Raheem Mostert said himself that he's going to be available week 1. So we'll see what happens, right? I think players are really optimistic about their own health. So if he happens to be available week 1, what is his workload going to be like? They're not going to give him. I'll be surprised if he gets 10 touches. You know what I'm saying? Like this guy's going to be in the 5 to 10 touch range, most likely starting off. And does he get more? I don't know. I think that Mike McDaniel understands the type of running back he is. And also he's like 31. He's an older running back with injury. So he's not like a young spry guy. He's injury prone. I want to say injury prone. So I'm not going to use that term, but he has been injured a lot. And he's an older running back. I'd much rather wait for Sony Michel. So let's compare the ADPs. So right now, Raheem Mostert has like an ADP of like 130. Sony Michel right now is like 159. So he's going, you could get him later, or you could get him for free off the waiver wire, probably a lot of times in your draft. So Sony Michel, to me, we saw what he did with the Rams last year. He looked pretty good, and he fills a need in his offense that we've talked about on the show. He's the biggest back on the team. Raheem Mostert is the fastest. Sony Michel is the more the bruiser. He's going to be the guy who's most likely going to get the goal line opportunities, short yardage, things like that. But it's that goal line opportunity that interests me the most. So I feel like Raheem Mostert, he's got to be extremely efficient with his touches, which he could do. And in this type of offense, he could take it to the house, most likely, with his speed, the way the offense is, the zone read scheme. But I just feel like if you're going, and he presents upside, but you should be nervous on him. I don't mind you taking a shot late in your draft because, again, that's what the 17th, 18th round is for. But I think I prefer Sony Michel in that area because I just feel like he, to me, is more of the touchdown scoring option between the two.
Yeah, and I mean, efficiency has been Raheem Mostert's bread and butter since he came into the league. He's never been a big volume guy. So even if he is only getting 10 to 12 touches, he's still going to have some boom weeks. The biggest thing, though, and we've all harped on it quite a bit, is just, can he stay healthy? I mean, this guy didn't make it out of week 1 last season. I mean, it's just, it's tough to see, but that's just what Raheem Mostert has done his entire career. And he looked good last year before he got hurt, too. Like, he ripped off a couple big plays and then immediately went down again. So, we're all hopeful that Raheem Mostert can bounce back this season, but there's a reason that he's getting drafted as far down draft boards as he is. It's just because of the injury concern. So we got a question here from Marco, and Marco says, thoughts on Antonio Gibson? Should we be worried? Victoria, Gibby Truther, that's your honey baby boo-boo. I forget exactly what you call him, but Gibson is your guy. Let's go ahead and hear how you're feeling about him after a couple weeks of camp.
You were close, David. It's honey baby sweetie, but I applaud you. You were very close. Okay, Antonio Gibson, my guy, one of the most polarizing players for fantasy this year, considering, first season as a rookie, people are not as high on him. Last season, people are very high. His ADP was super high in the 10 to 12 running back range, and we got burned a little bit because of that. So I feel like now you're either in the camp that, okay, he got burned. He didn't live up to that price tag last year. I don't want to deal with it. I saw his injuries. Or you see this current price tag today and you see kind of an opportunity, right? So there's, as much as I am a truther, I am not going to sit here and I cannot sit here and recommend with the same confidence as I did last year, recommend you to draft Antonio Gibson this year. And that's because there are some bad things, excuse me, that we are seeing happening, right? They drafted Brian Robinson. I love when people call him a 3rd round pick because it was a compensatory pick in the end of the 3rd round. I like to call him a 4th round, but we'll call him the 3rd round pick, right? You got the uncertainty of that 3-headed backfield, which lowers Antonio Gibson's potential ceiling. You've got Brian Robinson, potential vulturing goal line work and touchdowns. You got, of course, J.D. McKissick, pass catching specialist, J.D. McKiss, this, you know what I mean? So that stinks. He's got good things going for him outside of that, though. That lack of the elite passing game role not great, right? He had, I think, less than three or less catches in every single game that J.D. McKissic was active in last year. And then probably one of the worst things too, Washington has a good offensive line. They led the NFL in run block win rate last season, but they only ranked 18th overall in yards per rush. So that's not good for Gibson's rushing ability. It led to him having a really poor yards per carry at 4.0 for last season, right? There is some good that I'm seeing from training camp. Besides this hamstring injury, he's back though. He's back and practicing in full. One thing he's been really bad at the last 2 seasons, and it is his pass protection. That is why J.D. McKissic comes out on third downs, because they don't trust him with pass pro. He's been working on that in training camp. He's mentioned that he's worked on this. He feels more confident in this part of his game. He was just so bad at that the last 2 years. So we'll have to see how that pans out. I saw some pretty good video footage of him working on pass pro. Carson Wentz, I know, let's talk about Carson Wentz very, very briefly, because Wentz is, whatever. He's not too much of an upgrade, but I think he's an upgrade from Taylor Heineke nonetheless. So I think Gibson still has an opportunity to get back to how efficient he was with his touches in his rookie season with Wentz there. He was 4th in red zone touches among all running backs in 2021, which is great. I still think they're going to go to him at that goal line. Sure, Brian Robinson is going to get some looks, but Gibson is a heavy running back. He's a bruising running back. He can still get it done there. And despite the injury bias, he's only missed 4 games total in his first 2 seasons. I saw that on paper and thought, it feels like way worse than that. And I know we don't like to talk about overall finishes in particular when we look at rankings, but his availability has led to overall RB1 numbers over these last 2 seasons. Not points per game. Points per game, he's anyway, I think he was running back 18 and 19 in points per game, but that availability led him to the overall RB1 numbers. So the guy scores touchdowns. He's a high volume rusher, and he does catch passes, but not at like an elite rate. So the last thing you like right now, you have to like, is his ADP, running back 23. So I still think he has that ability to be a solid RB2 for your squad. If you're not having to draft him before round 4 or 5 and redraft, I know he's going pretty late, Dave, and Underdog, you could confirm that for best ball, 8th or 9th round. But yeah, there is reason to be worried this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's sliding into the 7th or 8th round of best ball, and he was a guy that I wasn't really too crazy about. But at that price, give it to me all day. I will start off my draft with 6 receivers and then draft Antonio Gibson as my wide receiver 1 and feel pretty darn good about it. And I've been doing that quite a bit lately. But, you talked about it, Vic, and this is something that I've been saying a lot recently. Availability is a skill, and I don't care what anybody else has to say about it. If you're able to play through injuries, and that's something that should be valuable. And players like Antonio Gibson and Ezekiel Elliott and Zach Ertz, they might not have the best per game numbers, but if it's somebody that you can plug in and get consistent production out of every single week, I'm happy with a guy like Antonio Gibson. So, if he was getting drafted where he was last year, in the 2nd or 3rd round, I'd probably be off. But with where he's sliding right now, if you can get Antonio Gibson in the 6th round, even if you've already got a running back or 2, I'd be totally okay, drafting Antonio Gibson at that discount, because he is a very talented player who's going to see a decent amount of volume, even if he does lose some of the high value touches. Troy, what do you have to add about Antonio Gibson? I mean, really, Vic knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
I would say tough to follow that up.
I would say Vic summed it up perfectly. And then he's going in that range where I like him a lot better than some guys. So he's going in the Damian Harris, Miles Sanders, Tony Pollard range. Yeah, I like Antonio Gibson in that range, because here now I'll take him, because he's slow in the beginning of the offseason before the draft. His ADP was still very high. And then after Brian Robinson got drafted, it started slipping. And it continues to slip. We'll be like, hey, J.D. McKissic, after he was a Buffalo Bill, then changed his mind and came back to Washington, it started slipping even more. And now it's like, okay, the season's about to start. And this is a very nice price for Antonio Gibson. I love it. It's been my RB2, or like Dave said, as your RB1 potentially, depending on how your build is. So yeah, at that price, give it to me all day.
Yeah, and when you're doing, volume best ball drafting, if you're doing a few drafts a week or something like that, it's really important to just kind of take a step back every now and then, look at the board and reevaluate things. Because I think what happened is everybody said, oh, Gibson's a terrible value. And then everyone passed on Gibson and kept passing on Gibson and passing on Gibson. And now he's slid to the point where it's like, what are we doing? Like, Gibson is one of the best values out there. So I think that there's still some risk there. And the chance that Antonio Gibson doesn't live up to his ADP, but his ceiling makes him so alluring at that 6th or 7th round price tag that I'll take him all day. Because if you're drafting somebody that you can plug in for a full 17 games and get, high end RB2, low end RB1 production, what are we even talking about here? I mean, that seems crazy. It seems like you should absolutely be taking him there. The next question, though, that we'll move on from Gibson, this comes from somebody asking Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Swift. And if you look at ADP, when I saw this question at first, I thought, that's kind of crazy. Cook's getting drafted almost a full round ahead of DeAndre Swift. But then I started thinking about it, and this is a pretty good question. Troy, start us off here. Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Swift, who do you prefer?
Ay, Chihuahua. Like, I thought it was an easier question. Oh, I was going to say.
I think it's a keeper league question. I think it's keeper league, Cook or Swift.
Oh, yeah, it is a keeper league.
Yeah, I saw that.
Still,
that's what they said in the question, but it also didn't say anything about giving up specific rounds. So
True.
I'm assuming this question is in a vacuum, where it's just, are you keeping, like, who would you prefer? If there was a round tied to it with a value, but I think that the way the question was proposed is just, who should I keep, Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Swift, assuming you get the same penalty either way.
If it's me, I'm going Swift. I mean, he's the younger guy. I'm going Swift because, look, if it's a keeper league, whatever scenario, I think I'm going Swift. We've seen, and it's not a knock to Dalvin. Just me personally, I got to just give face off of me. If I'm on the draft board, I normally don't take Dalvin, and that's just me personally. Nothing wrong with Dalvin, but especially last year, Dalvin was extremely frustrated. He had so many red zone opportunities, for some reason could not find the end zone. Shout out to Kevin Murray. I'll be there. So anybody going to the expo, I'll be there. Say what's up to me. But yeah, I would say Swift. I got it. I just gotta go Swift, man. Again, there's not, you're pulling. It doesn't really, like they're in the same tier, right? So it really just gotta pick your favorite, and you gotta look at the different reasons. But I think that Swift also just gets more targets. So gets more targets, younger. I go Swift. I'm thinking to myself, like, is that the right answer? But in my heart of hearts, it's Swift for me.
I don't hate it. I mean, it's certainly close. Victoria, let's get your thoughts. DeAndre Swift or Dalvin Cook?
This was tough. I think if it is keeper, Troy's got a good point. You've got the younger guy. If you can continue to keep the same player year over year, etc., you could lean that way easily. I think you can also look at the Swift ceiling is so high, and you could say the same for Cook, but Cook, I feel like, has guaranteed volume in the passing game and the running game. And with Swift, there were times last season where I'm like, he's not getting some of the rushing attempts. I'm waiting. I'm watching Red Zone. I'm watching the game. I'm watching my app because I'm saying DeAndre Swift has 4.3 points, and then it's the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden he's got. So it's tough because he's got passing game volume when they're down, and we saw that last year. But I don't know. I feel like as frustrating as Cook was last year, so much of it was due to injury, and I think I would still lean Cook, but so slightly. It's really, really close for me.
Yeah, I'm going with Cook as well here, and I get the argument for Swift. But, Vicky talked about it. He doesn't get a lot of rushing work, and, I feel like this is almost blasphemous to say, and I know somebody's going to give me a hard time for it, but DeAndre Swift is terrible at running the ball on the ground. I mean, he's great at what he does through the air. He's an elite route runner. He does a lot after the catch. But you watch this man try to run between the tackles, and it looks like he runs into a brick wall every single time he gets the ball. I mean, he's very much kind of in that Saquon Barkley area as a runner where he's not trying to get, 3 to 5 yards on a carry. He's looking for the home run every single time. So what happens is he bounces around at the line of scrimmage, gets bottled up, and he's just flat out bad as a rusher. And his PFF grade reflects that. And I said that last year. I tweeted it out at one point. I think it was during the Bears game where he was just getting bottled up. And I said, man, DeAndre Swift is struggling as a rusher. And every single response was, are you kidding? This guy's the RB3 in fantasy
I'm about to say,
now.
like, people are not going to like that.
But it's the truth. And I mean, like, his production comes through the air. And you got people like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey who get a lot through the air as well, but they're also very good at running between the tackles and running outside and doing a lot on the ground. DeAndre Swift is a receiver that lines up in the backfield, but he just isn't that good as a rusher. So that kind of concerns me a little bit, just, long term, how useful he's going to be if he can't learn to run between tackles. Or like you said, Dalvin Cook, he's just not going to come off the field. He's going to see 20 carries and 5-6 targets every single week. It doesn't matter because he can do it anywhere on the field. So that's why I'm leaning with Dalvin here, even if he is a couple years older. Now, the last question we got, and then we'll move on to chat questions. So be sure to drop those in the chat if you haven't already. Next question, though, comes in from John Anderson, and he is saying, rank these quarterbacks. Oh, Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, Davis Mills, and Baker Mayfield. As far as starting quarterbacks go, I mean, we're listing 28 through 32 right here. It's gross. Vic, start us off here. How are you ranking these guys?
Oh, do I have to? No, I'm kidding.
Let's throw Jared Goff in the mix too and rank the 5. Why not?
Might as well throw Jared Goff in there.
Jared Goff, now you're gonna throw me completely off because
no, we'll keep it as is. These 4. Let's see how
these 4.
I think this is gross. I think Davis Mills and Baker Mayfield are closer for me than maybe some other people. I don't know. We've hyped up Davis Mills pretty much a lot on the show, but I would have to go with Mayfield for the new weapons. I'd probably go Mills next, Mariota for his rushing ability, and then Mitch has just looked apparently awful in every single rep he's taking in training camp. Mason Rudolph's talking about how he's going to get some reps with the 1 soon. If they go out there with Mason Rudolph as their starter, that's just going to be hilarious. But yeah, this is gross. If you did put Jared Goff here, would you guys put him first out of these guys?
I think he'd be out of all these guys, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
I don't know Baker.
Maybe not Baker, but yeah.
I'm putting Davis ahead of Jared Goff.
I like that order, Vic. I think my order is similar. If we're gonna be throwing Jared Goff in the mix, he'd probably be probably 2 for me. I think I put him at 2.
So you got Baker as your number 1 guy?
It's mainly just because it's more because of Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore. Like he's just lucky. But Mitch has Deontay Johnson, Claypool, George Pickens, but he's Mitch Trubisky. that's the only reason. So he might be able to upgrade himself to 4 or 5 just solely on the weapons. But Mitch got to show me because God, he was hard to watch.
I'm not sure if you saw today. Warren Sharp shared a clip from an article that was just ripping on Mitch Trubisky. That he missed like 16 consecutive passes. That he went like 2 for 32. That he couldn't complete anything more than 2 yards. Going on and on and on and on. And then at the very end of that blurb, it says, "And Mitch Trubisky is still far ahead of Kenny Pickett for the QB1 job." So that just makes me question, how bad is Kenny Pickett?
That's what I'm saying.
I did see that.
I've heard a lot of bad things about Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 3 paragraphs about how awful Trubisky's been, but he's still well ahead of Kenny Pickett for the week 1 starting quarterback job. So I think I'm with you guys a lot. I mean, Mitch is my last guy here, but I've got Davis Mills ahead of Baker. It's just the upside. I mean, Baker at this point, we know what he is. He's got a big arm, and he's going to get a little streaky. He's going to have 3 games where it's like, all right, cool, Baker Mayfield, that's the number 1 pick that we thought he'd be, and then he's going to be terrible for 3 to 5 games. That's kind of what he does. I've been talking about it all off season. I don't have to sit here and lay down the stats that I've been talking about nonstop, but Davis Mills balled as a quarterback last year. I mean, if you look at the games that he started, he had to come in 2 games and play cleanup duty when Tyrod Taylor got hurt, and his stats in both of those games were terrible, and he played less than 50% of the snaps. But if you look at the games where he started, we're looking at a big sample size here, 10 games. So it's not like, I'm cherry picking just a little bit here. His completion percentage in those 10 games was the best any rookie quarterback has ever posted in NFL history. I mean, this guy is a legitimate baller, and they had every opportunity where they could have traded up in this draft and they could have gotten themselves a quarterback. They could have brought in one of these free agent quarterbacks, but the team has already expressed their faith in Davis Mills to be the quarterback going forward. We're getting reports out of camp that Nico Collins has been tearing it up. Dameon Pierce is supposedly looking really good. We already know that Brandon Cooks is going to be, just a top 20 receiver every single year pretty much. So Houston, they're not a team that I'm, projecting to make the playoffs by any means, but I think there is some hidden value here in fantasy football. Davis Mills, Brandon Cook, Nico Collins, those are all guys that I like. Even Brevin Jordan as a late round throw. And then you look at projected game scripts as well.
Yes.
They might be playing for the Hawks a lot.
Sorry, I got to interrupt you. I heard something about how they said that Pharaoh Brown is apparently the tight end one in Houston. There was some kind of report there.
Yeah. And I mean,
if you look, that's why he was shooting up the trending topic on Sleeper. They was hyping up Pharaoh Brown. So just let you know.
And the thing, there's no, like, Brandon Cooks is the standout player there. No disrespect to Brandon Cooks, but he's not like what you think of when you think of a wide receiver one. But then you look down this entire depth chart, and they're not a team that's really gone out and like pulled in big name free agents. They are really trying to home grow this roster, and they've got a bunch of young, decently talented players. So there's a lot of ambiguity in this team right now, and I think that people don't know how the pecking order is really going to shake out between all these pass catchers. But you got Davis Mills, who has shown that he's able to lead a team to wins, and you've got a bunch of young, decent talents surrounding him. So I don't know who the guy is going to be to step up. I've been putting my chips on Nico Collins, but it could be Pharaoh Brown, it could be Brevin Jordan. There's other guys that could step up. But either way, I'm a believer in Davis Mills. So my order with these guys: Davis Mills, Baker Mayfield, Marcus Mariota, and then Mitch Trubisky. Well, let's go on to the chat. We got some questions in here that we will close out the show with. And the first question we got is Romeo Doubs the best fantasy prospect for the Packers wide receivers? As I'm sure we have all heard, Christian Watson has been unable to practice so far. And just looking historically, when a rookie, we talked about this last week, when a rookie misses camp time, it typically doesn't fare too well for them. Now you add in the layer of Green Bay and how important trust is with Aaron Rodgers and his wide receivers. Missing time as a rookie could be completely detrimental for Christian Watson. So now we're looking at Romeo Doubs, who has been tearing up camp. Vic, start us off here. Is he the best fantasy prospect for the Packers wide receivers?
We covered a Packers wide receiver room question last week, if y'all are interested, and we did mention this dude who is balling out in camp. Dave sent us a tweet today in our Footballguys Mailbag Team Twitter chat that said, Aaron Rodgers said that's kind of rare for a young guy, talking about Romeo, talking about his wow plays so far in camp. It sounds like he's already building that trust with a rookie, which is crazy because we all know how Aaron Rodgers is. He's passing to his guys. We talked about Randall Cobb being a really, really, really late dart throw for these Packers wideouts, but you can't ignore this news. It's continued since last week, since we talked about him last week, just continued making crazy plays in camp. So I feel like his ADP is going to be rising because I think when we looked at it last week, he was probably undrafted for redraft leagues if we were looking at ADP from last week. But yeah, I mean, this guy's got to be hopping ADP right now like crazy. I'm about to check.
He has been my favorite 18th round pick lately. I've been drafting him quite a bit. And I think, I talk about this all the time, but just trying to kind of figure out what this Packers offense is going to look like. They lose Devontae Adams and they lose Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That is over 50% of their wide receiver production over the last 3 seasons. I mean, this isn't just one guy stepping away. This is their number 1 and number 2 option. So I think that Devontae Adams, his role is going to be filled by Allen Lazard, which I've talked about ad nauseum at this point, so I won't keep talking about that. And then for the flanker role opposite him, that's where I expected Christian Watson to play, in the MVS role, where you kind of play a field stretcher. You're not running a lot of intricate routes. You're just going downfield and trying to stretch the field with some big plays. And that's what I really expected from Christian Watson. But now without him there, I think Doubs can fit really easily into that role. So, I mean, there's a chance that Romeo Doubs is playing in 3 wide receiver sets, which, the Packers run at a decent rate, should be on the field like 35-40% of the time. And if he's able to do well in that role, he can get elevated to a slot role where he can take over for a dusty Randall Cobb and might end up seeing, legitimate snaps this season. So, Doubs has become one of my favorite picks ever since camp opened. He's just been tearing it up, and everything that Rodgers has had to say about him sounds great. Troy, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Man, you guys summed it up perfectly. It's just in training camp when it comes to rookies, like every single day, it's like this man's killing it in practice. So it's hard to ignore, especially when Aaron Rodgers said something like that. That's not like a light compliment, right? That's a serious compliment. And he's just so cheap in drafts. I'm mad I don't have enough shares of him. I think I only have like one share right now, and I need to step it up. I need to start getting more shares because look, he's as like David and Victoria already mentioned, the position for number 2 and the number 3, it's so wide open, and this is the time to claim your spot. So, hey, he could be he could be everyone's favorite sleeper, and his ADP is just going to shoot up. The sooner we get to the actual season, I believe his ADP is just going to climb and climb. So, keep your eye on that.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the next question. This one comes in from Mr. Scampers, and we could answer this one quickly here. A Gib or A Rob in a vacuum? So we're talking about Antonio Gibson or Allen Robinson. This isn't even a question for me. Give me A Rob all day.
Yep.
Right.
The opportunity
we're on the
he
same
has.
page here. I thought so.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You see that picture of him just, I don't even know who he was matched up on, but it was a terribly thrown ball, like right in a defender's hands, and A-Rob was behind him, jumped over, reached over the top, and just yanked the ball out of his hand, threw the defender with him. I mean, he's looking like his old self. We knew that he was going to be rejuvenated, finally getting to play with a good quarterback, and we are seeing it early in camp. Next question comes in from Eric White. I love this question. What do you feel is the best combo when drafting from the 10th spot in a 12-team PPR redraft league? I just tweeted about this a couple days ago, and anytime I'm drafting at the end of the first round, I've had this start a bunch of times, and it just looks so nice when it's all said and done. If I can start with Travis Kelce and DeAndre Swift, I'm getting the tight end one, and I'm getting an RB or a running back that has the potential to be the RB1. That's my favorite start from 10 is Kelce and Swift. Do you guys have anyone specific that you're aiming for at that 1-2 turn?
Vicky, you go.
No, I like that too. I was gonna say if you can get Travis Kelce there, I did that. I wasn't in the 10th spot, but I did that for Scott Fishbowl. Travis Kelce was still there at the 12. So if you're looking at something like that, I do like DeAndre Swift there. I think other running backs in that range, potentially Mixon could fall. You've got Nick Chubb. I like Aaron Jones. I'd probably take Aaron Jones over Swift, but that's just me personally. I'm very high on Aaron Jones for this season just because of that lack of depth for the Packers. But yeah, I definitely love taking Travis Kelce there if he's available.
Yeah, and somebody else another running back there who right now is getting drafted in like the mid to back end of the second, but camp reports have been amazing about this guy, and I'm convinced that he's going to go into the 1-2 turn by the time redraft season rolls around. Saquon Barkley, and that's another guy that you don't have to reach for him right now that early, but I wouldn't feel bad at all taking Saquon Barkley with either the 10th pick or the 3rd pick in the first round. I love Saquon Barkley at that ADP.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it depends on who's there. Like I've done so many different options. Like going wide receiver could work. Wide receiver, running back. I just feel like it really depends on your preference. But I feel like it's hard to mess up the first and second round. Your first 2 picks. But I mean, Travis Kelce, obviously, I probably wouldn't do it personally. It makes complete sense. Don't get me wrong, but I like to either go running back, wide receiver, running back, or hey, if you get like Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams combo, or if one of the top receivers happens to slip there, like, look, it's a hot start, right? So it really depends on what your preference is, but I feel like there's so many possibilities when it comes to that.
And this was a 1 in a million. I've only pulled this one off once, but yeah, there were some sliding receivers once in one of the drafts that I was doing, and from that back in the first round, I ended up with, just like you said, Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams with my 1st and 2nd round pick, and that I could not imagine a better start. Yeah. So, Eric, if for whatever reason your league mates are snoozing and you can get Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams, that's a nice way to start off the draft. But that'll do it for today's show, guys. That was a fun one. Can you believe that we got actual football tomorrow? I mean, it might be
on Thursday.
3rd string against the Raiders' 3rd string, but it's real football. Like, we're going to see NFL.
I don't care.
I'm ready for it. I will watch every second of that game. I don't care how bad it is.
The wild boy can take snaps, and I'm watching it.
And then, just about a month out from football season. So you can catch us every Tuesday.
Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Wednesday. Eastern Standard Time, usually.
Thank you, Troy. And we came at you a little bit early this week. So hopefully we didn't throw off your schedules too much, but we will see you next week. Every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we sign off, Troy, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
You can find me at TKing Mode, pretty much all social media platforms. Twitter is my home base. I appreciate it.
Vic, let everyone know where they can find you.
At FFB_Victoria on Twitter and Instagram. Hit me up.
And you can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's Kluge. And of course, if you have not already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguys. You can watch this show live, but then we will release it on podcast shortly after. But if you want to get it before everybody else, youtube.com/footballguys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.